The Young and the Restless Spoilers. At Society, the lighting is always designed to flatter and the atmosphere is always engineered to suggest control. But the truth of Genoa City is that control is often just performed ceasefully when two dynasties are at war and the people caught between them are running out of ways to pretend they're fine. Jack Abbott sits with Nikki Newman at a table positioned perfectly for privacy without actually guaranteeing it. The kind of seating choice that feels safe until you remember that Society is a stage as much as it is a restaurant. Their conversation is tense, low-voiced, and loaded with urgency. There is no romance in it, no indulgent nostalgia, only the sharp pressure of strategy, of consequences, of a shared understanding that Victor Newman is escalating again and that waiting him out is no longer an option. Jack's composure looks steady, but it's the composure of a man calculating survival, not a man enjoying a quiet evening. Nikki's posture carries the strain of someone who has spent decades balancing loyalty and morality, love and self-respect, and who has finally reached a point where the cost of silence feels more dangerous than the cost of rebellion. They are not meeting because they want drama. They are meeting because Victor has created a world where anyone who opposes him must do so carefully, intelligently, and quickly, or risk being crushed under the weight of his influence. They lean in, exchange details, map out angles, and try to build a counterstrike that won't destroy them in the process. Yet neither of them notices the eyes watching from across the room, the kind of gaze that isn't merely curious, but hungry, searching for proof, searching for betrayal. Searching for a moment to justify everything that has been boiling beneath the surface for weeks. Diane Jenkins Abbott walks in and the temperature of the room shifts, though most people don't consciously register it. She's learned to read society the way Victor reads a boardroom, as a network of alliances, potential threats, and unspoken judgments. She enters expecting to see her husband, perhaps with business partners, perhaps alone, perhaps stressed, but still anchored in the fragile peace they have been trying to build. Instead, she sees Jack and Nikki together, close enough that their heads incline toward each other, close enough that the space between them looks intimate from a distance even if the words being exchanged are purely tactical. Diane's body reacts before her reason can catch up. In a town where perception is weaponized, where every glance can be interpreted as a confession, she knows what this looks like, and the knowledge burns. It isn't only jealousy, though jealousy rises fast and sharp. It's the deeper, more humiliating fear that she has been trying to hold the Abbott family together while Jack's attention and protection are still drifting toward the woman who represents everything Diane has been fighting against: Victor's orbit, Newman gravity, and the endless cycle of collateral damage. Diane's insecurity isn't born from nothing. It has been fed by weeks of war, by Jack's constant preoccupation, by the feeling that their marriage is always one crisis away from being swallowed by the Abbott-Newman feud. When she sees Nikki at Jack's table, something inside her snaps into a harsh clarity. She is tired of being patient, tired of swallowing her discomfort to prove she belongs, tired of being told to trust while the world keeps offering evidence that trust is foolish. The tension from the Newman-Abbott battle has already been tightening Diane's nerves day by day, turning her into someone who feels constantly on guard, constantly bracing for the next blow. She doesn't walk toward the table calmly. She moves with purpose that borders on rage, each step fueled by the conviction that she has been made to look like a fool in public, and that in Genoa City, public humiliation is never just emotional, it is strategic. She sees society's eyes drifting toward her, sees the subtle shifts in body language as people sense a confrontation brewing, and instead of retreating, it hardens her resolve. Diane's anger isn't a quiet thing. It is a storm pushed over the edge by the sight of Jack and Nikki sharing what appears, from a distance, to be closeness. She arrives at their table like a reckoning. The moment Diane reaches them, there is no gentle inquiry, no private request to step aside, no attempt to preserve dignity. Her fury erupts in the most direct language possible. Before Nikki can even fully turn to understand what is happening, Diane's hand swings across the space between them with a force that is both shocking and unmistakably intentional. The slap lands like thunder, loud enough to cut through the ambient noise of society, loud enough to silence nearby conversations mid-sentence. Nikki's head snaps slightly with the impact, her expression frozen in stunned disbelief. For a split second, it's as if the room forgets how to breathe. Diane stands over Nikki with eyes blazing, demanding that she stay away from Jack immediately, completely, and without excuses. It isn't just an accusation. It is an ultimatum delivered through violence, a public claim of territory, a declaration that Diane will no longer tolerate being made to feel threatened by the Newman presence in her marriage. Jack's shock is immediate and visceral, because even in Genoa City, where confrontations happen daily, this is something else entirely. This isn't a sharp remark or a hostile insinuation. This is public assault, a line crossed in front of an audience that will never forget it. Jack moves fast, not because he is choosing sides in a calculated way, but because the situation is spiraling and someone has to stop it before it becomes irreversible. He grabs Diane, holding her back with firm restraint, trying to steady her, trying to keep her from doing something that cannot be undone. But the more he restrains her, the more Diane interprets it as control rather than protection. And her fury twists into something even darker, humiliation intensified by the feeling of being physically held back while the woman she just struck remains seated, shocked, and suddenly positioned as the victim in a public spectacle. In the chaos, Jack's instincts push him into a posture that becomes the most damaging image of the night. He steps in front of Nikki. The movement is protective, immediate, and absolute. He places himself as a barrier between Diane's rage and Nikki's stunned silence, as if he is shielding Nikki from further harm. It is a reflex born from Jack's character's tendency to protect, his inability to watch someone get hurt in front of him without intervening. But in a marriage already strained by war and insecurity, reflex becomes meaning, and meaning becomes a wound. Diane sees Jack's body positioned between her and Nikki and feels something crack inside her that no amount of explanation will easily repair. In her eyes, it isn't Jack preventing a public disaster. It is Jack choosing Nikki over her in the clearest possible way. It is Jack treating Nikki as someone worth defending while treating Diane as the threat to be contained. The optics are brutal, and in Genoa City, optics are often more powerful than truth. Around them, society becomes a frozen tableau of disbelief. People stare opally now, no longer pretending not to watch. Some look horrified, some look thrilled in that quiet, guilty way people get when they witness a scandal that will fuel gossip for weeks. Whispered reactions ripple outward, phones discreetly angled, eyes darting between faces as if everyone is trying to decide which version of the story they will tell later. The confrontation is no longer just a private marriage crisis. It has become public theater, and public theater in Genoa City always has consequences. Nikki's shock shifts slowly into a colder composure, the kind she has learned to summon when the world is watching. But beneath it is pain and disbelief because Nikki knows what it means to be judged, knows what it means to be blamed for men's choices, and knows what it feels like to be attacked as a symbol rather than a person. Jack's face carries the strain of someone trying to hold three disasters at once: Diane's rage, Nikki's humiliation, and the inevitable fallout that will hit the Abbotts like a wave. Diane, still held back, looks at Jack with an expression that is not only angry but devastated. The fury is still there, but it is now laced with something more fragile and more poisonous: the sense of being betrayed in public. Her eyes linger on the way Jack shields Nikki, on the protective stance he cannot seem to release, and the pain in her face becomes the most dangerous emotion of all because pain can turn into resolve. Diane feels exposed, replaced, diminished. She feels like she has been fighting to be Jack's partner while Jack, in the moment that mattered, instinctively protected someone else. Whether Jack's choice was about preventing violence or about defending Nikki specifically doesn't matter anymore, because Diane's heart has already decided what it means. And once Diane decides she has been betrayed, she will begin to reinterpret everything. Every late-night conversation Jack had about strategy. Every time he insisted Nikki's involvement was necessary, every moment Diane swallowed her discomfort for the sake of unity. All of it will now feel like preparation for this humiliation, like a slow march toward the moment she finally understood that she might never truly come first. The night doesn't end with a neat resolution, because nothing about this is neat. The slap is already a story spreading across Genoa City, a story that will be twisted by enemies and exploited by people who thrive on instability. Victor will hear about it, and Victor will understand immediately how useful it is. Diane's outburst can be framed as Abbott chaos, as proof that Jack's personal life is unraveling, as a weakness to exploit. Nikki will be forced to decide whether she retaliates, whether she distances herself, whether she doubles down on her strategy with Jack or steps away to avoid making the situation worse. Jack will be trapped between damage control and emotional reckoning, between defending his wife and acknowledging that her insecurity didn't come from nowhere. And Diane, standing in the aftermath of her own rage, will feel the kind of cold clarity that often precedes the most destructive decisions if Jack can shield Nikki in public. Then Diane may decide she has nothing left to lose by making sure the entire town understands that she will not be sidelined, quietly again setting the stage for a new escalation in the Abbott-Newman War, one sparked not by business, but by a public moment of humiliation that has already rewritten the rules of loyalty for everyone watching. The air in the Chancellor Park gazebo was biting, a stark reflection of the frost that had settled over Genoa City this winter. Jack Abbott paced the wooden floorboards, his breath hitching invisible puffs of white. The intel was solid to ignore. Victor Newman's latest assault on Jabot wasn't just a corporate maneuver. It was a digital siege powered by an illicit AI program, a weapon Victor had no legal right to possess. And the one person who held the encryption keys, the digital breadcrumbs that could trace the code back to Newman Enterprises' private servers, was the woman Victor had just banished from the ranch. Nikki. Jack stopped pacing. He stared out at the frozen pond, his mind racing. Nikki was vulnerable right now, furious at Victor for his obsession with destroying Jack, and isolated. It was a dangerous game to play, exploiting her pain for Jabot's survival, but Victor had left him no choice. If Jack could get Nikki to hand over the internal data logs she had access to as CEO of Newman Media, he could prove Victor's criminal negligence and bury him. He pulled his coat tighter, checking his watch. She agreed to meet him here, away from the prying eyes at the athletic club. When he saw her approaching, wrapped in a pristine white wool coat that made her look like a fragile ice queen, his heart tugged with a mixture of old affection and desperate calculation. "Jack," Nikki said, her voice brittle. She didn't hug him. She stood with her arms crossed, a defensive posture that told him she was holding herself together by a thread. "You said it was urgent. If Victor finds out I'm talking to you?" "Let him find out," Jack said, stepping closer, his voice low and urgent. "He threw you out, Nikki. He chose a vendetta over his marriage." Again. Nikki looked away, pain flashing in her blue eyes. "I don't need a lecture on my husband's flaws, Jack. I know them better than anyone." "I'm not here to lecture," Jack said softly. He reached out, his gloved hand covering hers where it clutched her lapel. "I'm here to ask you to help me stop him. You know about the AI program. You know he's using stolen tech from Kane Ashby to cripple Jabot. I need the logs, Nikki. I need the proof." Nikki's eyes widened. "Jack, that's corporate espionage. If I give you that drive, I'm betraying the company my children will inherit." "You're saving them from their father's madness," Jack countered, stepping into her personal space, his gaze intense. He lowered his voice to a whisper, his hand sliding up to cup her elbow, a gesture of intimate familiarity that transcended decades. "He's out of control. You're the only one who can stop this war before it destroys everything. Do it for us. Do it for the friendship that has survived every hell Victor has put us through." He leaned in, his forehead almost touching hers, pleading with every ounce of charm and sincerity he possessed. For a moment, the rest of the world fell away. It was just Jack and Nikki, two wounded soldiers in a war that never ended. From the shadows of the manicured hedges, Diane Jenkins watched, her blood turning to ice. She had followed Jack. She hadn't wanted to, But the secrecy in his eyes this morning, the way he had dismissed her concerns about the AI attack, had gnawed at her. Now, seeing him there, his hand on Nikki Newman's arm, his face inches from hers, the undeniable chemistry radiating between them like a heat wave, Diane felt a nausea that had nothing to do with the cold. It wasn't just business. It never was with them. Diane stepped out from behind the hedge, her heels clicking sharply on the frozen pavement. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet park. So this is the strategy. Diane's voice was a razor, slicing through the intimacy of the moment. Jack and Nikki sprang apart. Jack spun around, guilt flashing across his face before he masked it with concern. Diane, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, Diane spat, marching up the gazebo steps. Her eyes were wild, darting between Jack and Nikki. I thought we were fighting this battle together, Jack. I didn't realize your plan involved cozying up to the enemy's wife. I am not the enemy, Diane, Nikki said, her voice regaining its imperious edge. She straightened her coat, lifting her chin. And I certainly don't need your permission to speak to my oldest friend. Friend, Diane let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. She closed the distance to Nikki, her hands balling into fists at her sides. Is that what you call it? I saw you too. The touching, the whispering. You just can't help yourself, can you, Nikki? Victor kicks you to the curb, and you come running to Jack for comfort. You're pathetic. Diane, stop, Jack warned, stepping between them. This isn't what you think. I was asking Nikki for the data logs regarding the AI. It's strictly business. Business, Diane turned on Jack, her eyes blazing with betrayal. You're soliciting corporate secrets from her by playing on her emotions. That's low, Jack. Even for you. But looking at you too. It didn't look like you were suffering through it. She whipped her head back to Nikki. You love this, don't you? You love dangling him on a string, knowing he'll always have a soft spot for the great Nikki Newman. You are delusional, Nikki sneered, her composure cracking. Jack and I share a history you couldn't possibly understand. A bond that doesn't require manipulation. Unlike you, I don't have to fake my way into people's lives. The insult landed with the force of a physical blow. Diane's face contorted in rage. The insecurity that always lurked beneath her redeemed exterior roared to the surface. She wasn't just the wife. She was the outsider, the one who had to claw her way back from the dead to be here, while Nikki Newman simply existed and commanded Jack's attention. You self-righteous bitch, Diane hissed. Her hand flew up. The movement was primal, a lash of pure fury aimed squarely at Nikki's perfectly made-up face. No. Jack moved with the speed of a man terrified of the consequences. He caught Diane's wrist in midair, inches from Nikki's cheek. The impact of his grip was jarring. Diane gasped, freezing as she looked from her trapped wrist up to Jack's eyes. They weren't looking at her with love. They were wide with shock and a stern rebuke. Jack, Diane breathed, her voice trembling. Let go of me. Not until you calm down, Jack said, his voice hard. He didn't release her. He held her arm firmly, effectively shielding Nikki with his own body. Nikki took a step back, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and vindication. My God, Jack, is this what you live with? She's unhinged. Go, Nikki, Jack said over his shoulder, never taking his eyes off his wife. Please, just go. Nikki didn't need to be told twice. She gave Diane one last look of disdainful pity, gathered her coat, and hurried down the steps, disappearing into the gray afternoon. Silence descended on the gazebo, heavy and suffocating. Jack finally released Diane's wrist. She rubbed the spot where his fingers had been, the physical sensation replaced by a cold ache in her chest. You chose her, Diane whispered. I chose to stop you from assaulting a woman in a public park, Jack snapped, the stress of the Jabot crisis finally breaking through his patience. Do you have any idea what Victor would do if you had struck Nikki? He would have used it to bury us. The headlines wouldn't be about his illegal AI. They'd be about the mad Diane Jenkins attacking his wife. Don't hide behind the company, Jack. Diane screamed, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. You defended her. You stood there, holding her hand, looking at her like she's the only woman in the world who matters. And when I called you on it, you grabbed me. I was trying to get the evidence we need to save Jabot. Jack shouted back, his hands thrown up in exasperation. I was using the only leverage I had. Nikki is the key, Diane. She has the drive. She has the proof. At what cost? Diane demanded, her voice dropping to a lethal quiet. She paced away from him, then spun back, her face set in stone. I have stood by you through everything since I came back. I have taken the insults, the suspicion, the hatred from this town. I have fought for you, Jack. But I will not fight for a man who is emotionally cheating on me with his ex-wife under the guise of saving the company. I am not cheating on you, Jack said, exhausted. It felt like it, Diane said, her voice shaking. And I won't live like this. I won't be the third wheel in my own marriage. She took a deep breath, the cold air stinging her lungs, sharpening her resolve. Here is the deal, Jack, she said, her tone icy and final. You want my help. You want me to keep fighting Michael Baldwin, to keep digging for dirt on Victor, to stand by your side as Mrs. Abbott. Then you cut her off. Jack blinked. What? Nikki, Diane clarified. You cut her off. Completely. No more secret meetings. No more using her for intel. No more comforting her when Victor is mean. You sever that tie, right now. You find another way to save Jabot that doesn't involve holding hands with Nikki Newman. Diane, be reasonable, Jack pleaded. She is our only lead. Without her, Victor wins. Jabot falls. I don't care, Diane cried out. Let it fall. If saving a cosmetics company means I have to watch my husband fawn over the love of his life, then let it burn to the ground. She stepped closer, her eyes boring into his. You have to choose, Jack, right now. You can have your connection to Nikki and whatever strategy you think you're playing, or you can have me. But you cannot have both. Diane, if you walk out of here and call her, if you pursue this plan with her, I am done, Diane vowed, her voice trembling with the weight of the ultimatum. I will pull my support. I will stop helping you with the board. I will pack my bags, and I will leave the Abbott mansion tonight. And you can explain to Kyle why his mother left again. She turned her back on him, staring out at the frozen landscape, her shoulders rigid. Jack stood paralyzed in the center of the gazebo. The wind howled through the lattice, carrying the scent of snow and ruin. He looked at Diane's rigid back, the woman who had fought so hard to return to him. Then he thought of the flash drive Nikki might possess, the digital key that could secure his family's legacy and finally defeat Victor. To cut off Nikki was to surrender Jabot to Victor's mercy. To pursue Nikki was to lose his wife. The silence stretched, agonizing and absolute, as Jack Abbott stood on the precipice, the weight of his company in one hand and his heart in the other. He opened his mouth to speak, but the wind stole his words, leaving him standing in the cold, caught between the two women who defined his life.